On with our final story, the rebels who overthrew Central African Republic's President Francois Bozize 6 months ago are killing scores of civilians with impunity, said the Human Rights Watch in a statement released on Wednesday. The coalition rebel group have been blamed for abuses, including widespread looting, rapes and conscription of child soldiers, and also engaged in malicious destruction of numerous homes and villages. Now, the leader of the Seleka rebels and current President Michael Zitogia, who is also the first Muslim to hold the position, had declared that he was disbanding the rebel alliance that brought him into power on September 13. But in Bosangoa, an area in the heartland of supporters of Christian former President Bozize, fighters remained in place. Now, the United States welcomed an announcement by the Central African Republic that it had dissolved its Seleka rebel group, while also dispensing the violent alliance, which is a cautious warning. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about this story. It didn't receive as much attention as Syria, the DRC and Egypt. I mean, scores of civilians were being killed, and even currently by rebel groups. Where's the media when you need it the most?
I think that's a very, very important question, and I think what we've seen is that we've seen the reports coming out from human organizations such as Human Rights Watch, the UN, etc., etc. And the humanitarian crisis on the ground in the Central African Republic is absolutely outrageous. It's an horrendous situation, and it's a complex story in many, many ways. It's a country that doesn't have its own capacity actually to deal with these rebels, and I think that what I would have liked to see particularly from the South African media, is much more coverage and a follow-up, and also the South African military forces, the SANDF's involvement in the Central African Republic, and actually holding also some of our decision makers on the ground here accountable.
Ralph, do you want to add on to that quickly?
Yeah, I saw the report, the Human Rights Watch report that you're talking about. Very graphic, very disturbing, and then it leaves no doubt, in my view, that there are atrocities being committed in that area. And it's a concern that we do not see those stories reported in the media, especially in South Africa's newspapers, because South Africa has pronounced itself on the continent when it comes to foreign policy. We are present on the continent, and I think that should at least be matched by the extent to which we show commitment to reporting on such kind of issues. Just pulling out immediately after South African soldiers pulled out, it just shows there is no commitment to a sense of reporting on human rights atrocities in that area. And I believe that the strength and credibility of South Africa's media could actually help to raise the concerns about that story, to try to escalate that story to an extent where the international community can get a sense as to what's happening.
Like we saw in the Rwanda attacks as well. And with that being said, do you feel media is fair and transparent enough when covering issues of war and bloodshed, as opposed to hearsay, speculation and gossip? Stephanie.
Well, I think, I thank God for Human Rights Watch and other organizations like that, because when reports like this come out, they draw attention back to crises like the Central African Republic. But clearly, South Africa had a role to play there, did play a role. Most people in South Africa learned of the Central African Republic when those soldiers were killed earlier this year. But there's an ongoing humanitarian crisis that Ilva has spoken about and that Ralph has spoken about as well. There's also a political process that's ongoing. There's also a new peacekeeping force that will be coming. The AU is involved. The regional bodies are involved. So the story does have angles that could be covered by South Africa, even from here. And I think that's certainly something that the South African media hasn't done. And that is an error, I think.
Let's take a caller online. We've got Robert on the line. Robert, welcome to Media Monitor. What is your question or comment?
Hello.
Yes, sir. Go ahead with your question or comment.
No, I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment with regard to Harvey. I think he's a well-known person, and for him to go on public and criticize that woman, I think it's not fair for him, because he was in an affair. That affair was also done in the office. I mean, that's the part of it. And for him to also go on and make such comments.
Unfortunately, Robert, we can't, we're having problems with that line. It's a very, very bad line, but I think he was making a comment in regards to the Vavi issue that we dealt with, just to take us on the sidetrack. And he basically thinks that it's very irresponsible of Vavi to go out on social media and, you know, make such statements as well, which is what we all agreed on earlier on. Now, let's move on with the CAR. The ousting of former CAR President Francois Bozize was highly publicized, maybe even more than the current situation, than what is happening in the current situation.
Yeah, there isn't much that is being reported on that, but when you read closely, it shows that even Seleka rebels is just a conglomeration of groups, ill-disciplined. We have seen in the immediate weeks after the ousting, the March 24 ousting of Bozize, we have seen an indication of looting. But you look at that report, it clearly shows that it's going to take time before Central African Republic is back to what you can call civilian kind of administration, where there is peace and security. And that should be the concern. You find that actually the time of the combat, the amount of people who lost their lives during the combat is actually lower than what has happened in the aftermath of the fall of Bozize's regime.
Yes.
There is systematic torture, killing of people there, which is really, really a concern.
I just want to read a statement before you make that comment, Stephanie. This is from Daniel Bekele, who's the Africa Director at Human Rights Watch. He said the Central African Republic truly is a forgotten human rights and humanitarian crisis. This is very true. Nobody's giving that story much attention. Stephanie?
No, I think, you know, one of the things is Central Africa has always had violent overthrows of its leaders. So in a way, there's a pattern, and there's a bit of a, this is the way the CAR works. You know, it's just been another, you know, a coup like we've seen before. But actually, it hasn't. In the past, coups have happened. There's been instability in the capital, in particular, for several days, and afterwards, peace is essentially restored, stability is restored, and civilians can go about their business. In this particular case, the Seleka rebels are still present throughout the country. There's an absolute state of lawlessness. We now see a return of the president. Bozize is trying to take back power, perhaps violently as well. And there's an ongoing situation of insecurity in the country that is absolutely horrific. And I think, you know, that is really the key issue here. Who can restore stability and some kind of semblance of security for the civilians?
All right. Well, that's how we're going to end the CAR issue. We'll be back to wrap up the show straight after this. Do stay with us.